Welcome everyone to today's FSHD University on Employment Rights 101. I'm sorry, that's actually the wrong one. We're doing a different FSHD University. What happens is we have a lot of amazing speakers come back, like Marisa Spain. And actually, today's topic is working with FSHD navigating vocational rehabilitation services. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded. You will be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel within a week or so. So please do feel free to reference that whenever you need to. If you do have questions, we ask that you please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You are welcome to use the chat. However, for organizing the questions, we try to use the Q&A box just so that we can ensure we answer everything that we need to. With that, I would really like to introduce our speaker today, Marisa Spain, who is returning. She has done multiple webinars for us in the past and also presented recently at our FSHD Connect conference. And the reason that we have Marisa come back is because she is a disability justice advocate with early onset FSHD herself. She's an absolute wonderful human being and speaker. She works as an employment advocate at Disability Rights Michigan, her state's protection and advocacy organization for people with disabilities. Marisa spends most of her work days advising callers with issues regarding disability-related workplace discrimination issues and advocating for individuals struggling in the state vocational rehabilitation system. She has been a part of our FSHD Society community for quite some time now, and we appreciate all of her volunteer work with us, and we're absolutely excited to have her present on this topic today. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to you, Marisa.
All right. Thanks, Ashley. So I am excited to talk to you all today about something that I'm very passionate about, which is vocational rehabilitation services, how they can help you navigating employment with FSHD, what's available, how do you access those services, that kind of things. I'm definitely open to taking questions throughout the presentation, or you can wait until the end. But if you have questions, feel free to pop those in the Q&A and Ashley can interrupt me and we can just answer those as we go along. Okay, well, she already introduced me, but hi, my name is Marissa. I'm from the Southeast Michigan area, so I live around in the Metro Detroit area. I live with early onset FSHD. I was officially diagnosed when I was 10 years old, but I have a extensive family history, so I've always known that I had FSHD. I am a full-time power wheelchair user now, and I have been for about 6 years. Started losing my mobility in my mid-teenage years. I am a former recipient of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, so I know firsthand how the things I'm about to tell you about today can be so helpful. And like Ashley said, I am also an advocate with the Client Assistance Program at Disability Rights Michigan. We will get into what the Client Assistance Program is at the very end of our talk today. But basically, I spend my days helping people who are having difficulties getting what they need from my state's vocational rehabilitation system in Michigan. And I've also been a recipient of these services as well. So I know how vocational rehabilitation services can be helpful, and I also know firsthand how hard it can be to get them. So I am hoping that today I can arm you with some knowledge about the program, a little bit about your rights as a applicant and recipient of VR services, so that if you decide to take advantage of the program, you might be a little bit more informed when you go in. So starting at the basic level of what is vocational rehabilitation, I'm going to call it VR just because it's easier and faster. So when I first heard of VR services, I was like, well, that's a really weird name. I was 17. I was like, I don't need to be rehabilitated. But basically, the program is titled this way because it was originally designed for veterans who acquired disabilities during service in World War One. So they were coming back from the war with vision loss and missing limbs and things. And the government decided, hey, it's our responsibility to help these people get back into the workforce. So they designed the first iteration of what would become the vocational rehabilitation program, which today is available to all eligible individuals with disabilities, not just veterans. And the program as we know it today was created and authorized by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So under this program, there is an agency in every state and territory, and you have certain it's a federally created um, program. And so you have federally protected rights, and the VR agencies have federally mandated responsibilities to provide these services in each state and territory. And their basic function is to provide services and funding to help eligible disabled individuals get and keep jobs or to advance in employment. So first, I just want to go over a few examples of services that you could get from one of these agencies. This is by no means an extensive list, but just like a couple examples in the next few slides. So the first is for our youth and students, and they're called transition services or pre-employment transition services. And these are a particular grouping of services that the VR agencies need to provide to youth and students who are individuals up to at least 21 years old, but depending on the state, it could be up to 26 years old. It depends on how long you can stay in the public school system. So like in Michigan, it's up to 26. And the agencies must provide certain services to these individuals. They're supposed to do outreach to the schools um, to make sure that they provide these certain services, things like job exploration counseling. So if you have a young person in your life that doesn't quite know what they want to do, the VR agencies have people working for them called vocational rehabilitation counselors, and they can help people, kind of explore and talk through what their interests are, what they might want to do for a career, and help them explore that. They can offer work-based learning opportunities. They can like place youth in like work-based learning settings so they can get an idea of like what it might be to work, what tasks or skills might they need to enter the workforce um, post high school or post college. They can offer post-secondary education counseling. So if you know you want to go get an advanced degree but don't know exactly what you want to be doing, they can help you figure that out. There's workplace readiness training, like if you need to develop like soft skills like communication, time management, that kind of thing. There's training that they can either do at the agency or refer out to vendors to help work with um, individuals in developing those skills. And then they can provide instruction and self-advocacy. They can educate youth about their employment rights, like what rights do they have to requesting reasonable accommodations in the workplace, and things like that. And so in order to access these services, you should just be able to reach out to the VR agency and say like, hey, I am, or I have this individual, this child who is within the age limit, and has a disability and would like to access one of these five services. They don't even need to go through like the whole eligibility and application process. The agency should just be able to like give these services. For the rest of the services, there's a bit more of a like an eligibility process, and we'll talk about that after these next two services. So the next one is rehabilitation technology. I know that this is going to be a particularly useful example of a service for our community because as our FSHD progresses, we might require more technology in order to stay mobile and actively engaged in the workforce. So examples of rehabilitation technology are just anything that helps you remain employed or advance in employment, to help like mitigate the impacts of your disability. And so this could be things like medical equipment that's not covered by insurance, wheelchairs, braces, walkers, that kind of thing, in the power wheelchair I'm sitting in right now and that I'm sitting in this picture on the screen has a seat lift function. So the seat can raise up and down to make me, anywhere between my regular sitting height and about 6 feet tall. And it was not covered by my insurance when I was getting this wheelchair, and vocational rehabilitation in my state paid for that lift. I think it was about $1,600. And so that was really nice. Um, Something that I just want to spread as far as I absolutely can is that VR programs can pay for wheelchair accessible vehicles. As you can see in the picture on the right hand side of the screen, this is me and my accessible vehicle that I obtained from Michigan's VR agency with their assistance 2 years ago. Um, it wasn't necessarily easy, hence why I needed an advocate. But this is a form of rehabilitation technology that the agencies must ensure is available to individuals. So once you're eligible, if you need a van and order to keep working, like say you work outside of your home, as you see, I note at the bottom of this slide, any service must be needed to obtain, maintain, or advance in employment. So all of the services that they provide need to be employment based. But so for me, I work outside of my home. And when I was transitioning into using a power wheelchair, I couldn't transport it without a van like this. And so that was kind of the rationale for VR to provide that to me. So if anyone is in a similar situation, these vans are very, very expensive. So definitely hit up your state's VR agency. Other vehicle modifications like hand controls, maybe you don't need a ramp yet, but you're no longer able to drive with your feet. You could get their assistance purchasing hand controls because your health insurance is not going to pay for these things. Um, if you are new to using a wheelchair, but you still work outside of your home, but your home is not accessible, VR can help pay for things like ramps and widened doorways to help you get out of your house, right? Like you can't work outside of your house if you can't get outside of your house. Um, so yeah, they can pay for anything needed in order, that is employment related, if it's needed to obtain, maintain, uh, or advance. And we'll talk a little bit more about how they develop the plan for services in a minute.
I'm sorry, Marissa, a few
Yeah,
questions. So you
yeah.
did mention to obtain or retain employment. So can you just confirm you do not currently have to be employed, or do you have to be employed in order to apply for some of these?
No, so the purpose and the function of the program is the same whether you are unemployed or currently employed. Your employment does not need to be um, at risk necessarily in order to um, become eligible for this program and to get certain services. So, like for example, when I applied for services to get help with getting this van, I was stably employed. I had a job, and it was just getting more difficult for me to. I had like a off the shelf, just like foldable, portable power wheelchair that I would put in and out of the back of my Honda Fit with like a little crane lift thing, which would require me to like stand up, push it into the back of the trunk, and then like walk around to the driver's side, and it was becoming unsustainable. So that was the reason that I brought to my VR agency of being like, hey, I'm not going to be able to maintain my employment, even though, like my employer is not telling me they're going to fire me right now because of these things, but like I know this is not sustainable. I'm getting this new wheelchair. I'm not going to be able to keep my employment outside of the home if I don't get one of these vehicles. Um, so yes, and well, we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about eligibility, but yeah, they're not allowed to consider your like employment status currently when determining eligibility either. Um,
Perfect. Thank you so much.
yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more too. Yeah. Um, so another really valuable service that these agencies offer is training. So The program basically, in order to be eligible, you need a disability, but the services themselves do not need to be directly disability related. It's all about helping you get employment and to achieve your maximum vocational potential, is how Congress um, stated it and when they were passing the Rehabilitation Act. Um, so another very valuable service that they can offer is training. So this can be things like college tuition, books and materials, sometimes room and board, if you need room and board as a in excess of your regular living expenses, like you need to go live in a dorm when you would otherwise have been living in like a residential housing. Um, Again, the service needs to be tied to a specific employment outcome and needed to achieve it. So an example that I love to use is like nursing. You need a nursing degree in order to be a nurse. So VR would need to pay for the tuition because that degree is needed in order to achieve that specific thing. They can help pay for other kinds of vocational training, like if you need some sort of certificate to advance in your career, or other kind of training to advance or change careers. I know a lot of people in our community might have gotten into the workforce perhaps before they even knew they had FSHD. And now that you're getting older, FSHD is progressing, and maybe you entered a very physical career that you can't do anymore. And you would love to change careers, but you're like, man, I would need to like go back to school, or I need to go get some sort of training or certification. Your vocational rehabilitation program in your state can pay for you to go get that so you can go get that new career. Okay. So hopefully, even with just those few services, like I said, there's a lot more. You're all on board and you're going to go run out and you're going to apply to vocational rehabilitation in your state or territory right when this is over. So how do you start? You need to apply for services. Most agencies will have a website, where they'll have an online application, or they'll have like a PDF you can download and fill out and email to them or mail to them, some sort of way to like fill out a form to tell them, hey, I would like to be considered for these services. I think I could benefit from them. So you'll complete that application, and then once they receive it, you will enter into the eligibility evaluation process. And so this is how it works in Michigan. I'm assuming it's very similar in each state, is that your application will be assigned to a counselor. So that's what they call their staff members that will deal directly with you. They generally call them vocational rehabilitation counselors. So they'll reach out to you and have a little bit of like an intake discussion. They'll tell you about the purpose of the program, which you already know a little bit about because you watched this presentation. And they'll ask you about your interests, what kind of services you think you might need, that kind of thing. They might have you complete some additional forms. They might ask you to provide some medical information. Like when I've applied for services more than once. I've had more than one case. I've provided information like visit summary notes from my neurologist with the MDA clinic. They sometimes will have their own forms they want you to fill out with just like your primary care physician. And then you'll give those things to them and then they'll review them, and they have 60 days within you having that intake discussion to determine your eligibility. So how do you become eligible? Who is eligible for these services? So you just need to be present in the state or territory which you're applying to. You don't need to like show proof of residency or anything. You just need to like be there. And you do not need to be a United States citizen, but you do need to be able to show that you're legally able to work in the United States, because this is an employment-based program. They want to make sure that you're going to be able to legally work when you're done. You must have a disability that presents a substantial impediment to employment. And this just means substantial impediment to employment is a defined term in the Rehabilitation Act. And it basically just means that your disability makes working difficult or slow. And if you have FSHD or you are a loved one of someone with FSHD, you know that FSHD makes just about everything difficult and slow. So I would imagine that most people, if not all, in our community who are affected would meet this criteria for services. And if you're told that you're ineligible, I will go through what you should do then. But I would hope not. And then you must also require VR services. This should be a relatively easy hurdle to cross if you're looking for anything like I've covered, like rehabilitation technology or training to advance. But there's a whole like list of services that they have to provide that are some are disability related, some are just employment related. You can always ask them what kind of services can you provide in general. Um, and like I mentioned a little bit earlier um, during the rehabilitation technology slide, they are prohibited from considering certain factors during the eligibility process. So this is not all of the things that they're prohibited from considering, but they include your current employment status, your income level, particular service needs, or anticipated cost of services. So they can't say, oh, you're employed or your employment is stable, you're not eligible. They cannot say your household makes too much money, you're not eligible. This is not a needs-based, this is not a socioeconomic needs-based program. It is eligibility based on disability and need for services. They can't consider your particular service needs, which I will admit gets a little sticky with that requirement for requiring VR services. But this is one of the things that they're prohibited from considering. And the anticipated cost of services. So they can't be like, oh, this van is going to cost us, $150,000. You're not eligible. We can't afford that. Um, so if they say any of those kinds of things to you, I will cover at the end what you should do about that. So after you're determined eligible, the agency has 90 days to develop what is called an individualized plan for employment, most often referred to as an IPE. Sometimes they call it a plan. And this is a document that you and your counselor will work together to develop. And it must include the services that you need to achieve a specific employment outcome. Like that example I gave earlier, the specific employment outcome would be nurse. It would include the services needed to achieve that. So, like nursing school tuition, maybe a wheelchair accessible vehicle if like public transportation is not available and you need that vehicle to travel to university to participate in that training service or after graduation to get to and from the hospital you work at, that kind of thing. So it needs to include the services that you need to achieve the specific employment outcome. And this needs to be developed within 90 days, but extensions are allowed, but they need to be with your written consent and agreement to a specific time period. Like, say they maybe need some more information in order to determine what services you particularly need. That might be a reason for an extension. And then my favorite part about this program and the way that the Rehabilitation Act is written is that the VR agency must provide individuals with the opportunity to exercise informed choice. And I love this so much because the way that the law is written and the way that the program is supposed to be operated is that it gives a lot of agency and choice to the individual with the disability. So, like your employment outcome, what you want to do, entirely up to you. They can help you figure it out, but it is up to you what you would like to do. The services that they provide, sometimes they will like contract out with vendors. They are supposed to provide you with information about the different vendors and you're supposed to be able to choose one. Now, informed choice is not unlimited choice. And so it might be like, for example, the Michigan VR agency has a policy where they will only pay up to the least cost service. So say there's three vendor options and you would prefer to go with the most expensive one, they could pay up to the amount of the one with the least cost, and you just have to make up the difference. So there could be consequences to, the choice that you make, but they need to provide you with the information needed to make that choice. Your employment setting is also up to you. Like if you want to work from home, you have the right to have an employment outcome that includes working from home. If you want to work outside your home, same thing. Um, the program is developed really is intended to give the disabled individual as much choice and agency as possible in determining their services, how they go through the program, and what their future and their career looks like. It's really neat. Okay. So I've been alluding to, nothing's going to go wrong, of course. Everything's going to go perfect. You're armed with some of your rights, you know what's going on. But if things do go wrong, what do you do? So when the Rehabilitation Act was written and created these vocational rehabilitation agencies, it also created, alongside it, client assistance programs. And so that's who I work for. And these programs can provide information and advocacy services to individuals going through the system and having difficulties or wanting to know about their rights. There is one in every state, just like there's a VR program in every state. There's a client assistance program in every state and territory. So you can call CAP. That's often what's referred to as CAP, Client Assistance Program. You can call CAP if you have questions about your rights. If you've been denied eligibility, which if anyone with FSHD has been denied eligibility, I would, as an advocate, I would think that that would be strange. So I would definitely recommend you call CAP if that happens. If you've been denied a specific service, or if there are delays in receiving services, if you're experiencing communication issues with your vocational rehabilitation counselor, can't come to an agreement on things, you can contact the CAP and they can assign an advocate to step in and help you. Some CAPs have different amounts of resources depending on the funding that's given for that state. So some have more capacity than others. Some have attorneys, like Michigan's CAP has one attorney. I know some CAPs are entirely made of attorneys. Some have no attorneys. So it really just depends on where you're at. And if you are thinking about filing a formal appeal, which you have the right to do, there is a formal request for review of any decision that affects the provision of VR services built in to the Rehabilitation Act. If you're thinking about filing a formal appeal and you think you might want assistance or representation because those appeals do go to administrative court, I would recommend reaching out to your CAP before you file something, because the nature and the wording of the request can have a bearing on how that hearing turns out. And you want it to turn out well. So definitely never hesitate to contact the CAP. We love answering questions and informing people about their rights in this program and what's available to them. Speaking of, does anyone have questions?
So I do have a number of questions here for you, Marissa, and we'll go ahead and get started with the first one. What type of documentation should someone gather before applying for VR services, and what role do healthcare providers play in the eligibility process?
Um, yeah, so you don't necessarily have to gather anything before applying. When you have that initial meeting, when someone reaches out to you, when your counselor reaches out to you, they should tell you what they're looking for. But in general, anything that substantiates your FSHD, and the counselor will be looking for information about how your disability affects your work activities. So if you have difficulties with your mobility, or if you have difficulties, um, if your upper body strength impacts any work duties you need to do, like trouble lifting, bending, like that kind of thing, they will want that sort of information. But you can come in with nothing, and they will tell you, they'll tell you what they need. Very often, I imagine they'll have a form they want you to go get filled out by your physician.
Can you talk a little bit more about the types of employment supports available through VR, like the job coaching, training, education, workplace accommodation? Just give a few more examples.
Yeah. So job coaching is a big one. And of course, all the services that they offer might, may or may not necessarily be relevant to someone with FSHD. As far as like job coaching goes, I see, of course, you could have overlapping diagnoses, but I see like job coaching being used very often for individuals who have like are on the autism spectrum, or have some sort of cognitive disability that affects their ability to understand work tasks. So a job coach is like a person that will essentially like go to work with you, help you understand um, your job duties, and help you work through um, how to perform the essential functions of any job. Um, I know at least in Michigan, I'm sure that the resources and the what is available in each state does differ a little bit. But in Michigan, our VR agency has a separate department called the Business Network Division that has, what do they call them? Consultants that will sometimes go and help employers understand what their responsibilities are under laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, like, I've had clients who are having difficulties getting accommodations from their employers, and our VR agency will, assign someone from that division to like help talk to the employer and help them understand what their responsibilities are. Um, and then also just like educating the individual seeking work about what their rights are, what they can do, how to get accommodations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and so along that vein, sometimes individuals with FSHD, they're used to their symptoms, right? They don't necessarily, it's just a part of life. They're used to the what comes with it. How can individuals effectively communicate the impact of FSHD on their ability to work and the supports that they need to succeed? Like any advice there?
Hmm. Yes. The the purpose of this program is to identify individuals with disabilities who their disability makes work difficult, and provide them with services. So I totally understand the if anyone has like a gut reaction to, we downplay how difficult things are. We want to be strong. We can do anything, which we can. We can do anything. But when interacting with a VR agency, I want you to be very honest about, and like give yourself a lot of grace to admit what is difficult for you, because that is the only way that they're going to be able to accurately identify what you might need. You might be used to just compensating in a certain way, but maybe that compensation is not very good for you, or is um, dangerous, or putting some kind of strain on your body that you don't need to be. If you are honest about that struggle the with your VR counselor, they might refer you to like get a rehabilitation technology assessment done with a professional who knows about what kinds of supports are out there. And they can recommend, different kinds of ergonomic supports, or, rehabilitation technology that would help you would help make work easier and help you maintain or obtain employment. So like just take inventory of what makes things hard and be honest about it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that that personal insight there.
Yeah,
It's really
it's
helpful.
hard, I know, but you can do it.
Um, for individuals who need to transition to a less physically demanding career when they are older, so let's say, over 50,
Mhm.
55, what types of education, retraining, or certification programs can VR help with?
Anything. Um, anything to get the career that you're wanting to go for. They can pay for graduate degrees. Um, I'm currently trying to get them to pay for law school. It's going. So they can pay for advanced degrees like that. They can assist with obtaining occupational licenses if you want to enter a new profession that has some kind of licensure involved. Um, they can, in theory, assist with individuals launching small businesses if you want to be an entrepreneur. Um, Definitely mixed reviews depending on what state you're in about how well that goes, but you could try. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think about what else someone might need to transition over. I mean, if you were in, like, if your only education was like up to a high school degree, maybe out of high school you entered the trades or, a physical job that didn't require a bachelor's degree, they can help you get a bachelor's degree if you're ready to move into that kind of employment. They can't discriminate based on age. You could be 75 and pursuing these services. There's no age limit. Yeah, it all depends on what you want to do and what you need to get there.
Thank you. I think that was more like, if someone's closer to like that retirement age, are they less likely to qualify for services? But it sounds like there is no
Uh,
limit.
no, they're prohibited from considering age.
Okay.
So yeah, I've had clients that are like 80.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and still wanting to work. That's yeah,
Amazing.
that's great.
Are there common mistakes that applicants make when working with VR, and how can they avoid these delays or misunderstandings?
Hmm. Well, I think knowing the purpose of the program going in, which now you all do, is and what you need to tell them like what eligibility is based on. So it's based on essentially it's based on that substantial impediment to employment. And knowing that that does not necessarily mean that like your current job needs to be in jeopardy or something. I think that this isn't necessarily a mistake, but I would think that I mean the biggest hurdles are one, people don't know that VR exists at all. Um, and two, people don't necessarily know their rights and they don't know that there's someone that they can contact if they think that things are going wrong. So I think it would be a mistake to like this sounds really bad, but I don't know how else to say it. Like don't ever necessarily take them at their word. Like if they tell you that you're ineligible, I would question that, right? And I'd reach out to a client assistance program and I'd say, "Hey, here's my situation. I was told I was ineligible. Are they are they right? Like I feel like I should be eligible. What's going on here?" And then that CAP advocate can help you figure that out. I'm sure that there are situations where that could be a correct determination. Um, but so I think that just knowing, and I want to say that I am a CAP advocate. So I see worst case scenarios all day, every day. So I know that my view of how difficult, and of course, what I've also personally experienced, I know that my view of the program is a little skewed. I'm gonna be honest about that. But the majority of people have don't have these issues, and interact with very amazing, competent counselors who are there to help them. They get the services that they need, and it's a wonderful experience. So I don't want anything that I say to the contrary to like make people nervous or make them think this is going to be super duper hard. I just want people to know that like if it is, there are people that you can reach out to. Because when I was first going through the system, before I was a CAP advocate, I got almost a year deep of just the most frustrating thing that ever happened to me. And I did not know of the client assistance program's existence, or that I could reach out to someone for help with what was going on. Um, so I think that would be my advice is just like get as much knowledge as you can and be as informed as you can while you're going through the process. And if you have questions, find someone to answer those.
Thank you. Shifting gears just a little bit more to like the disability rights side of the house. So, what if an employer accepts someone's need for a different job within the same workplace, but offers a job that has considerable less income attached to it?
Um, so reassignment is an accommodation that can, be considered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I believe that I don't think there are protections around like maintaining salary or title. Like I think if you are moved to a job that has like a lower salary or like a less seniority of a title, I don't think that they are mandated to maintain that for you. I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. Um, what do VR or does VR services coordinate with other benefit programs such as SSDI, Medicaid, Medicare, to help maintain financial stability while pursuing employment?
Yes, amazing question. Um, so actually, if you are a beneficiary of Social Security, so if you have SSI or SSDI, you are automatically presumed eligible for VR services. Um, and there are certain situations when like there's no federal requirement that states need to require some sort of financial participation from individuals, but they're allowed to establish needs tests. So like for example, in Michigan, there's financial participation is not required in services except for um, in the areas of like training and tuition. They have a needs test for that. But if you are a beneficiary of Social Security, the federal government says VR can't require your financial participation in anything. So that is a perk of um, accessing the VR program while if you're a beneficiary of Social Security. Another thing that the VR programs can do is either offer in-house or refer people out to vendors to provide benefits counseling. And benefits counselors are people who um, will work directly with a beneficiary to tell them what's going to happen to their benefits once they start working, because the rules are very, very complicated with Social Security and like how much you can work and maintain your benefits. It's a whole thing. So they have these people called benefits counselors who can help you figure that out. You can access the service if you're not with the VR program too. It's called Work Incentives Planning and Assistance, or WIPA. If anyone is a beneficiary of Social Security, wants to start working, I would highly recommend reaching out to a WIPA to get that counseling before you do it. Because if you don't know the rules and you work too much, you can end up with a nasty little thing called an overpayment, and it's sticky, sticky. We want to avoid that.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm.
Um, for caregivers, are there any type of programs that can support caregivers who need accommodations to take care of their loved ones with FSHD? Um, and is there any way that they should be involved in the VR process for a loved one with FSHD?
So as far as programs that would assist with caregivers, I mean, like the VR program is in order to be eligible, you need to be the person with the disability, and the goal is to provide services surrounding that individual in their employment. So there's not necessarily services geared towards caregivers, but there is certainly a role for caregivers in the VR process. The individual with the disability is entitled to have representatives with them, whether that's a client assistance program representative like me or a loved one. So this process can be um, it can be stressful. I mean, it's very similar to like providing an extra set of eyes and ears at like a doctor's appointment, right? Being if you think that, you know, your loved one with FSHD might want a little bit more support with interacting with VR, you're certainly they're allowed certainly allowed to bring you and to have you involved in the process if they want that support of interacting with VR and figuring out what they need to work, yeah, and find a career that they enjoy.
Thank you. Um, I think this will be our last questions, but based on your own experience and your passion, the work that you do, what advice would you give to someone with FSHD who feels overwhelmed or discouraged by the VR process and is questioning, will it even matter? Should I bother? What advice can you give them?
Yeah. Um, Reach out to the client assistance program. Um, Reach out to someone at the society and ask for my contact information. I'm more than happy to talk to people having specific issues. Um, if there's one thing that we're good at, it's being resilient. And I know we're all tired of being resilient, but it does pay off. Knowing your rights and just keeping on going is how you get to the end. I getting my van took 2 years. Um, it can be it can be a slow process, and there were definitely points in that journey where oof, it was rough. But like at that point, giving up really wasn't an option. I mean, we couldn't afford the van on our own, and I absolutely could not continue the way that I was. Like I needed the van in order to continue being being employed, being a productive member of society, being able to leave my house at all. Um, so I think maybe a lot of us might come to realize that we don't really have a choice, and that pushes you through a lot. Um, but yeah, knowing your rights and knowing that there are people out there to help you. I mean, when I was having all those difficulties, and I reached out to my client assistance program and was assigned an advocate who is now my coworker. Um, that it helped share the burden, and it helped me feel like I wasn't alone and like I had somebody helping fight for me, someone who knew what was going on to like make sure things were going well. And my case did like a 180 when I got her involved, um, and got moving along in the right direction. So yeah, I think that's if you're discouraged, reach out for help, preferably to someone who knows what's going on. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marissa. It's always a pleasure, and I really appreciate you being willing to take all the questions, give us this information, but also, doing this on the daily, supporting individuals, being an advocate, and helping them reach their career goals, especially when living with these rare conditions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
Well, we certainly appreciate always having you on. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at our next FSHD University. Look at our online calendar events to see what we have coming up. I also encourage you to please consider joining our multi-chapter meetings that will be taking place very soon this July. Another opportunity to kind of hear about some of the exciting things that we had going on at the IRC, our International Research Congress, that took place the last week of June. With that, again, thank you, Marissa. I look forward to our next webinar together, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Well,
Thank you. Bye.